Well, good morning, conference. And it's the middle of the afternoon in Afghanistan. And there are 10,000 of our forces, including many reservists, who are serving there. In recent months, 2,000 of our people have served in Libya operations. And across the world, many of our forces serve in different countries. Each of them bear the burden of their bravery. All of them demonstrate their patriotism, and they carry all of our pride. Now, Afghanistan, as Dan has alluded to, will remain our #1 defence priority. And now that a timetable has been set for the withdrawal from Afghanistan, it is important that our withdrawal does not precipitate the collapse in the progress that has been made in recent years. It's now essential that there's a meaningful political process to alongside the military might of the past decade that we've seen. Because Britain has fought 3 wars in Afghanistan over 80 years. This is our 4th, and we have no intention of there being a 5th. Since we last met as a conference, more than 50 of our forces have lost their lives in taking on the Taliban. And it's right that there remains an all-party consensus that we have a responsibility to always remember their sacrifice and a duty to never forget their families that they've left behind. Now, today, I want to talk about how we support those forces and their families, reflect on our defence policy, and announce some new important reforms. Recent events have taught us one thing, and that is we live in a more complicated world than ever before, and the pace of change is set to quicken still. Global terrorism, global recession, global warming, new threats require new technologies. Defence is becoming more intricate, more complicated, and more expensive. The search for clean water, the consequence of massive increases in population, deserve our attention alongside the threat of terror and the danger of cyber attack. In recent years, we've seen states fail. In recent months, we've seen governments fall. We are faced with the threat of groups of malevolent and violent individuals who are more motivated than ever before. In future, we will see conflicts between the people, more increasingly the case than across international borders. And there are dozens of states of concern, from Chad to Uzbekistan. Now, this is a complicated world, and there can be no opt-out from it, and that is what David Cameron is learning on the job. But what's our response as a political party? At a time when our resilience has been tested, when resources are constrained and the public is wary. We've always been a party that believed that our values and our interests extend beyond our shores, and that we should have the power to persuade and the ability to act. Never for us any form of jingoism, but a strength and a belief in the ability to have a strong defence policy with Labour. Now, I want to share with you this morning what I think can often be the most effective defence policy for our country, and that is a world-class development policy. It doesn't always have to be a shiny new piece of military equipment, but that world-class development policy that Harriet and Douglas Alexander have done so much to pioneer. Because that investment, the investment in schools, the investment in democracy, the investment in local economies, can help prevent the spread of conflict. And I believe that it's often the case that that careful prevention of development policy can often be so much more effective than the painful cure of military intervention. However, conference, we all know that if development and diplomacy don't succeed, the decision to deploy our forces will always and rightly be a controversial one. But I want to be clear this morning that I think that our government, a Tory government, did the right thing to act to prevent the slaughter of thousands of people in Libya. In the same way that a previous government, a previous British government, were unforgivably wrong in sitting and watching the slaughter of hundreds of thousands of people in Rwanda. Now, I know this conversation is much more difficult to have because of events in Iraq. And we will debate, and we will disagree, and we'll be unreconciled on occasion. But I don't want our party to ever allow the anger that so many of us felt about Iraq to permanently trump the eternal shame that all of us felt about the failure to act in Rwanda. Now, I was delighted when Ed Miliband offered me this job in Shadow Defence role. Firstly, because I think our party should always do what's right for our forces and their families. But also, I, along with a brilliant Shadow Defence team, want to challenge the age-old, ill-informed orthodoxy that the Labour Party is the party of the NHS and the Tories are the party of the forces. Particularly at a time when the Tories, through their health reforms and their defence review, are proving themselves to be the party of neither. It is essential that a Labour opposition that wishes to be a Labour government again is the party of both. Let's look at what the Tories have done. Let's look at what the Tories have done over the past year or so. An army cut by 7,000. An island nation with aircraft carriers with no aircraft upon them. Now, you don't have to be a military strategist to know what aircraft carriers are meant to do. The clue is in the name. And when you think of some of our forces in Afghanistan, huddled round computers, looking for news from home from loved ones, they log into their email and look in their inbox, not to discover the welcome news from home, but to discover they've been sacked by email by their government. And perhaps most painfully of all of this, the permanent changes they're making to pension payments will affect generations of our forces. Now, we all know it, that some savings have to be made. But we all know the deficit is temporary, but these cuts in pension payments are permanent. The whole country knows that it is grossly unfair for a man in his late 80s who jumped out of a landing craft in Normandy in 1944 to today have to be paying the price for George Osborne's economics. And compare it with our record. When we were in government, an increase in the defence budget in real terms by 10%, real support for our veterans in housing and healthcare, doubling of compensation payments for those who are injured. I'm proud of our record, and you should be too. We shouldn't let the Tories tarnish it, because unless we stand up for the remarkable things we did the last time we were in power, we will find it so much harder to win the next time that we seek power. Now, no party, for all my criticisms of the government, no party has a monopoly of wisdom or experience when it comes to defence or defence-related issues. And when we talk about heroism in our movement, we often think of Keir Hardie, Attlee, Gaitskell, Bevan, and many others. Each of them were bold, each of them were brilliant, but none of them ever wished to attract the description of being a hero. There's a different type of quiet heroism. It's the heroism that comes from service in our forces, and the wisdom that comes from that service is precious. It's always been with our movement, and it's been with all political parties in our country through time. Jim Callaghan served in the Royal Navy long before he was our Prime Minister. Denis Healey served in the British Army long before he served at the Treasury. That instinct's always been with us, and it's with us today. That's why it's fantastic that we've already heard from Dan Jarvis, one of our newest MPs. And what you don't know is he's the first person to resign his commission to stand for Parliament since the Second World War. Alongside Dan, we have Gunner John Whale, whose many years of service to our country in Northern Ireland, in Kosovo, and in Afghanistan. Next to John, we have Sophie Gardner, a remarkable woman, a wing commander in the Royal Air Force, a real groundbreaker. In every job that Sophie's had in the Royal Air Force, she's been the first woman to fill any of those posts. And next to Sophie, from Scotland, Frankie Caldwell, captain in the Royal Tank Regiment. Frankie was awarded an MBE for service to our country and in our forces. Now, each of these four brilliant and brave individuals wanted a better world, so they joined our forces. And each of them wanted a fairer Britain, so they joined our party. And we should be proud of them, we should welcome them, and we should have many more just like them. And that's what we intend to do. Our message to all of those veterans: if you share our values, come and make our movement stronger. And that's why there's one more person I wish to introduce to you today. From Liverpool, a corporal who served in Cyprus, who served in Kuwait, and who served in Iraq. Corporal Stephen Burke, and welcome on stage.